Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Extended Family, Season 1, Episode 7, The Consequences of Sleepovers. The episode's description reads as follows. Trey is in charge of the nest for an evening, but when Grace asks to have a friend over, Jim abandons his plans to help navigate the unpredictability of sleepovers. The episode was directed by Victor Levin, the episode was written by Victor Levin and directed by Gail Werner. This is one of the few episodes that were not directed by James Widows this season.
The director of this episode is also directing the next episode. I saw them make a excited post about that on their social media.
Cool stuff. Before going further, I will tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. All right, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
It didn't go where I thought it was going to go. This episode, I don't know. I liked it.
Yep.
I liked it. I didn't really have any real problems with it. I thought it landed a little bit more on the serious side again. Just like, which episode was it? I said that before.
Maybe Sushi? That one?
I don't know. One of the episodes in the last couple of weeks, I was like, oh, this was a little more serious.
Oh, you're probably talking about the one where they set Jim up on a blind date. That one?
Yes.
Yes, that,
okay, yeah, that's the one. And because that's also the one where we learned that Grace is going to sleepovers and smoking pot.
Right. Yes.
Which is where I thought we were going with this.
Yeah.
I thought we were finally going to delve into that situation. But it turns out that neither of the Sophies were involved in this storyline.
Actually, I thought this would be like, there was going to be way more people.
Yeah, I thought we were having a sleepover, as in like multiple people, and there's going to be a party. But no, it turns out we're just talking about one friend sleeping over, and we really kind of dive into teenage romances.
Yeah, and so this is actually probably one of my favorite episodes of the season. I think it's either this or The Consequences of Sushi. I just, I kind of liked where this episode went.
Yeah, I feel like it did a great job of showing Jim dealing with parenting a teenager. And I feel like we had some great stuff dealing with the relationship between Jim and Trey, which is awesome to see them together.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this week in and week out, that is a highlight of this series for me, is that relationship. And in this specific case, it's kind of Jim mentoring Trey in fatherhood, specifically of fathering a teenager.
Right.
So, and it's that's really refreshing for a television series in any kind of media. That's not a relationship we typically see.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying is, it's a little more serious, right? Like there's a kind of heavy stuff here. It's still a sitcom. We still have some jokes in there, but it's not like a silly, funny, ha-ha kind of episode. It's like we're dealing with things episode. And
I absolutely appreciate that.
And I feel like they are really finding where they land, and that's what they're doing, is they're kind of trying to tell these stories about parenthood and about raising a family and about these situations that real parents deal with, and how to maneuver them, and how, they don't always do everything right, and how you got to rely on other people to help you sometimes.
This episode, more than any other, makes me hope that they get renewed for a second season.
Yeah, I can see that. We also got Grandpa Bobby in this episode. I've said it before. I would love to make him a main cast member if we do get a second season.
And we got an unusual pairing. We don't usually see Julia and not Uncle Bobby, Grandpa Bobby interacting.
Yeah, and it was a very unexpected to see what's happening with them in this story, specifically with the relationship between those two. And it really showed us a different side of how, this family is really, even though they kind of really suck sometimes, at the same time, they got their stuff together.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an unusual family situation.
Yeah.
And it's one that, once again, I appreciate seeing. It's clear that these people, even though Jim and Julia are divorced, they're all still a family.
They're all still a family, and they all love and care for each other, and they all want the best for each other.
All right, so do we have anything else to say before getting into this thing?
Well, let's just go scene by scene, and yeah.
Okay. The episode opens with Jim wearing an old-style Revolutionary War outfit in the living room. The kids look at him, looking bored, and without even saying anything, turn back to look at their phones. Jim is disappointed in the lack of reaction. And then we have our credits.
Yeah, very quick in this episode. Mm-hmm. And he's Paul Revere is who he is.
Yes, but we don't know that yet.
Well, I knew that already.
Oh, you did?
I did. So you were late to the game like Trey.
Yeah, I mean, as usual.
Okay.
So Jim asks if they heard from their mother when we come back to the credits. He's participating in Paul Revere's ride reenactment.
Yeah, the Sons of Liberty reenactment. He says he cannot be late. Doesn't know why Julia's not here. So he's passing off the nest in this moment is what's happening.
Neither kid seems to be taking the British threat very seriously. Because I think everything turned out okay in that regard.
It did.
Yep. Jim is doing this for a girl, apparently.
Yeah, so Grace tells him that Betsy Ross is going to really like his outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And he says she's not Betsy Ross yet. She's still Betsy Griscom, single and available. And he couldn't tell if she was flirting with him or Ben Franklin. So
I frequently make that mistake.
Jim's got a little crush on the actress playing Betsy Ross, and this was a fun little historical quibble between them. Betsy Griscom being Elizabeth's maiden name before she married John Ross, which is actually her first of 3 husbands.
Oh.
I learned a lot about Betsy Ross when we visited Philadelphia and went to the Betsy Ross house, which she may or may not have ever actually lived in. And if she did live there, she just rented a room there, and she most certainly did not do her business out of this house.
Okay.
Yeah, very different history we learned actually going there than what you're kind of presented with in, the elementary version of it.
You see, you come here to hear a podcast about extended family, and you get a history lesson.
Yeah, but I did look this up when he said Griscom. That is her maiden name.
Okay.
She was born Elizabeth Griscom. And I'm guessing her second and third husbands probably wouldn't be too happy to know that she went down in history being known as Betsy Ross. Like, that was the name of her first husband. They were only married for 3 years before he died. She married a second time, had 2 children with that husband. He died. And then she married for the third time, had 5 children with that husband.
Oh, wow.
And lived until her 80s. So I'm not sure why she went down in history as being known as Betsy Ross.
So was John Ross more famous than the other 2?
No. I mean, I think that was maybe just the name she had during this supposed possible interaction with George Washington about making the flag, which isn't even really a fact. It's just kind of one possibility of what happened.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, she lived most of her life being known as Elizabeth. I didn't write it down. The name of her third husband.
Okay, whoever that happens to be.
Yeah.
Apparently not important to history at all.
But both Betsy Ross and that third husband are buried at the courtyard of the Betsy Ross house.
Okay.
Where they were moved to.
Ooh, okay.
Which is really, it feels kind of scummy.
Yeah.
Like, I was there, I saw her grave, and she's actually been buried in 2 different places before that. And they moved her here, for the tourism of it all.
Oh, okay. They're not exactly letting her rest in peace.
Right?
Okay, so...
Anyways.
Yeah, I think we should return to our podcast about extended family.
Grace says that he should ask her for her number, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly what they would have done in the 1700s.
Yep. She is thrilled that he's attempting to date, though would prefer more modern attempts, like a dating profile, but whatevs. Jim says dating at his age is harder, and I'm not quite at Jim's age yet, but I can totally attest to the fact that when you get older, it definitely gets harder.
Yeah.
But Grace says it's never easy, and Jim doesn't want to know why she knows that.
Yeah.
Jimmy Jr.
But we'll get to that later in the episode.
We will. Jimmy Jr. brings in his whale lamp, and Jim declares that his genes are strong in him, which Jimmy sarcastically says is great news. He's going to end up the raspberry farmer or whatever the heck it was. Cranberry, that's right. So, yeah, that's exciting news. Enter Trey, who sees Jim.
Jim puts Grace in charge.
Oh, okay.
Which lasted all of 5 seconds because then Trey arrives.
Because a sort of real adult enters the picture in Trey, who sees Jim and bursts out laughing, but doesn't want an explanation, and he will laugh for the next several scenes about Jim's outfit. Trey tells him that Julia had a work emergency that he knows nothing about and did not ask.
Yeah, so he's here to take care of the kids.
Jim is about to head out and starts to explain, but Trey laughs some more, saying that whatever the exact answer is will not be as good as what his imagination says. Grace asks her dad for a sleepover, but he's off duty. Trey's in charge and tells Grace to commence the sleepover. Jim congratulates him on the bold move with no knowledge of what this will actually entail. Like
right.
How many kids, who's going to be here, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and he quickly picks up on the fact that he missed that and asks Grace for more information. She says, just Katie, who Trey met once. And Trey says, oh, yeah, I think I liked her. He asks Jim if he knows Katie, and Jim says they've only been friends since kindergarten, and he's only met her about 9,000 times.
Yeah, that's a conservative estimate, by the way. Grace makes a comment, and Trey realizes that Jim is dressed as Paul Revere and not Captain Crunch.
Yeah.
Cut to Julia with Grandpa Bobby at the hospital. He's having kidney stones. She's there because he didn't want Jim or the kids to know about this situation.
Yeah, and I wonder why this was such a secret. Like, this was kind of weird to me. Like, he really doesn't want his son to know, but he calls Julia, of all people.
Right. I don't know. This would make more sense if this were like something serious, like cancer or something like that, or a cancer scare. But actually, I don't think that would make any sense. I think you would want Jim to know about your possible cancer. So yeah, either way,
I just feel it's really weird that he called in Julia.
Right.
And the fact that she agreed to do this really says something about their relationship that we didn't realize before. Because everything we've heard about them before is he's always like, oh, she doesn't like me. I got to leave before she gets here.
Right. Bobby apparently pretended that he was dead for an entire afternoon when Jim was a kid. And yeah, I'm sure that was not traumatizing at all. It didn't do any permanent damage. And this is a cue that the drugs that Bobby has in his system are finally kicking in. We return to Trey, still laughing about Jim's outfit. He goes to the bathroom and the doorbell rings. Katie arrives. Jim comes out of the bathroom and Katie is crying. Grace comes out at this exact moment and accuses them of making her cry.
Yeah, she's like, what did you say to her? And they in unison say nothing.
Right.
Katie is very upset, and we learn that she was just dumped.
By her boyfriend, Derek.
And Katie is played by Kiera Beasley.
Mm-hmm. And they go to the kitchen to talk while Trey and Jim look dumbfounded.
Yeah. And then we go back to the hospital.
Where Bobby is told that they're going to insert a camera into his urethra, and Bobby is really excited about this.
He's happy. He's like, yay, easy, in and out. We're going to be out of here, no problem. All you got to do is, look at me with a camera.
Yep.
And he's very excited about it. And the doctor here is Dr. Mullen. He's played by, I'm going to say this wrong, Ichbar Thiba.
I mean, that sounds pretty good.
And Ichbar Thiba played Principal Higgins on Glee, a recurring character.
Okay, so that's the character that you were talking about in the last podcast that will
actually
air after. I mean, the one we recorded last that will air after this episode.
Yeah.
Airs.
So, in tonight's Quantum Leap episode, there's another person from Glee who was actually a stunt double on that series, although probably not for Principal Higgins.
Probably not. Where are we? Okay, so
we're talking about the camera. And, yes. Julia asks Bobby, "Do you even know what the urethra is?" And he does not. So
she tries to use several euphemisms, to try to explain what exactly that is. He's not getting it, so she has to straight out tell him
what it is.
And he is not happy.
He's now
all.
Much less excited
yes.
about this whole situation.
So, and he calls the doctors barbarians. Jim has decided that Trey needs his support.
Yeah, so he's called his understudy into the performance and changed back into regular clothes.
I kind of find it really funny that we would switch back and forth, and so little time has actually moved forward in this episode. We keep cutting back, and Jim is barely moved in the scene. So Jim is gonna spy on the girls. He calls it compassionate. Oh, yeah, okay, before that. He basically says that Trey needs his support because of the crying girl involved, and that he is actually going to do nothing. but do compassionate surveillance. And Trey makes a joke like, I could have done nothing. But in the kitchen, Grace consoles Katie.
Yeah, and Katie says she looks terrible. Grace talks her down and says she's a really pretty crier. And she says that Derek doesn't know what he's doing.
And she says that Katie got a text saying, oh, he does, because he said he knew what he was doing in the text. And Grace ends up saying that she is brave for crying.
Yeah, and she tells Katie that the universe made boys so stupid to prepare them for all the dumb things that men are going to do to them when they get older. And Jim realizes she's right.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And so do I, for that matter. Katie says that she needs to go lie down.
She wants to win Derek back.
Right.
And Grace tells her that's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. You don't want him.
So they end up leaving the kitchen while Jim and Trey pretend that they aren't in fact spying.
Yeah, so Jim covers up the eavesdropping by talking about a vase. I don't know, was this the same vase that was featured in that other episode?
I'm not sure, though. You're talking about the consequences of matchmaking.
Yeah, a vase played into that too.
Yep.
But Trey doesn't know how to follow along. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Jim schools Trey on how to cover eavesdropping, and he says the correct response is yes and.
Right, which will come up again. They soon discover that a boy is standing out on the balcony.
On the balcony. And Jim wants to know if Trey put him there, which of course he didn't.
Right. So he did. It's Derek, as it turns out.
Turns out this is Derek, and Jim actually knows him, so he's probably been friends with the girls their whole lives too. And this is Derek Jesperson, according to the credits. He has a last name, and he is played by Corbin Marum.
And he apparently did parkour onto the balcony, and
yeah, he took the elevator in the building next door to the roof, parkoured from the roof of the building next door to their roof, and then climbed down the fire escape.
Well, you gotta admire his determination.
Why couldn't you have just used the elevator in this building?
Right.
And knocked on the door.
Maybe he has to be let into the building or something.
Okay, so try that.
Right. Before, as Jim ends up saying, before becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But he says he left his phone in the bushes back at the school or something for something.
He left his phone because he doesn't want his parents tracking him because he's supposed to be at some event at the school.
Right.
But he really needs to talk to Grace.
Grace comes out shocked that Derek is there, and he prefers not to say what he wants to say in front of her dad and the owner of the Celtics.
Yeah, and the guys are like, yeah, you're going to. But as soon as Grace asks for them to step away, they do. They respect her privacy.
Well, to a point.
Yeah, they go into the kitchen. Of course, they're eavesdropping again from the kitchen, but they do leave the room. And Derek tells Grace that he broke up with Katie because he's in love with her.
And Grace does not know how to react to that. He ends up leaving in shock before he gets grounded for life. She goes to the kitchen. Trey and Jim do a very unconvincing routine to pretend that they aren't spying, but Trey ends up taking the advice of the yes and bit.
Which doesn't go any better.
Right.
They're talking about a jar of jam this time.
Right. And I guess we're glad we're dealing with a 14-year-old, because otherwise she would have picked up on the fact that this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But... Grace asks Trey if he can go ask Jimmy to distract Katie for a few minutes. And Trey was very eager to take her up on that opportunity to leave this room.
I think I would be too.
And he tells Jim, you got this, and he's gone.
Jim and Grace are left alone. Meanwhile, Bobby has locked himself in the bathroom. The male nurse, I think that's who he is.
Yep, the nurse, his name is Sean Bell, and he's played by Malcolm Kellner.
He looks familiar to me, but I didn't actually look into his...
He had some credits, but nothing that stood out to me in particular.
So the male nurse calls Bobby her dad, to which she objects, and through the door tells Bobby that his dink is not in danger. Grace, back in that
the nest...
asks Jim for advice, and Jim awkwardly asks if she likes him back.
Yeah, because she basically keeps saying how wonderful and great he is, and she's just kind of shocked that he likes her, because she hadn't ever really thought that was an option.
And so she says yes, that she does in fact, and Jim nervously suggests that this wasn't the best night for her mom to have a work emergency. And Grace agrees.
Yeah, I'm curious how Julia would have handled this situation.
You know what? I don't think that she would have done a better job than Jim does.
Yeah, yeah.
So, meanwhile, Julia is trying to coach Bobby out of the bathroom. She first uses emotional blackmail.
Yeah, she said she regrets coming with him because he obviously doesn't value her or something like that.
And then does the tough love routine, which seems to do the trick. Meanwhile, Jim...
What she tells him is she deals with crises for a living.
Yep.
So he really should listen to what she has to say because this is what she gets paid for. And then she told him that they do far worse things at the OBGYN. Basically, suck it up.
Right.
You wouldn't last 10 minutes as a woman.
And neither would I.
And that seemed to work.
Yep. Jim tells Grace that deep down, everyone is awful. We all have awful impulses, and he admits to spying on Grace and that he was proud of her advice to Katie and gently steers her to the right answer, which is to tell Derek that she isn't interested. This is a great scene. Jim does a great job here. He makes a long-winded speech that goes all over the place.
Yeah,
but he
says that, Derek wasn't thinking and you shouldn't make impulsive decisions. And basically what it comes down to is this guy just broke up with your best friend.
Right.
So maybe you should support her.
But at the same time, he doesn't say that.
No.
He gently guides her to the right decision. And this is beautiful parenting in my mind. I think Jim does a great job here.
Yeah.
And,
He tells Grace she's at a crossroads, and she makes the decision to text Derek and tell him she's not interested. Jim tells her that Derek doesn't have his phone because it was left in the bushes near the school.
Right.
And wouldn't you think he'd have retrieved that before heading home? Probably.
Yeah, you would assume so.
And she says, oh, yeah, she's done that before. A fact that Jim does not look too happy to know.
But at the same time, he doesn't make a big deal out of that revelation.
Yeah.
After Grace leaves...
She says she's also done awful, selfish, impulsive things sometime. That's her reason for why she has done that before.
So she ends up leaving. Trey pops out of nowhere to say, you did got this.
You did got this.
And that was a great
and right before that, her and Jim did have like this nice little hug. They hugged it out, and it was this beautiful little moment.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Bobby wakes up with some new souvenirs. And the little rocks that, they took out of her, the kidney stones. Him, I meant. Wow. I think I did a great job with the pronouns when we were talking about quantum leap today. And I just screwed up the, normal pronouns just now.
It's hard to talk.
Yes, sometimes it is, especially when you're doing it a lot.
4 podcasts we're recording today. Yes. No big deal.
Right. So he refers to him. Oh, the doctor comes in, gives Bobby the good news. He refers to him once again as her dad. And this time, she just goes along with it. Yeah,
this time she didn't object. And I thought it was really funny. Bobby tells her, if you ever need me to go to the OBGYN with you, just say the word. And she's like, yeah, no. That's not going to happen.
Right.
And the doctor told him his urinary tract is as clean as a bell. Just don't wring it for a couple of days. And we learned that Bobby has an interest in the Golden Girls. So he needs to avoid the Golden Girls.
He's about the right age for that. So they go back home during the credits, and they do this little routine of, oh, we shouldn't enter at the same time. But then Bobby completely disregards
He's like,
that.
yeah, sure, and then literally follows her in. So he doesn't understand much. That's what we're learning about Bobby in this episode.
I mean, he's kind of an old man at this point.
And then he almost blows their whole cover because they asked Julia how her work thing went. And he's like, oh, it was great that she was there.
Right.
But they don't question it. But it's like, you're the one who wants to keep this a secret. And you almost just told everybody that she actually was somewhere helping you.
And Jim tells them to sit down and help them decide on what show to watch. I think they should watch Extended Family.
Ooh, or maybe Quantum Leap.
Yeah, perhaps. They could use the ratings.
Turn on NBC and let's watch the Tuesday lineup.
Yeah, there we go. So they sit down and watch TV as one big happy family, and that is when
and Bobby says anything but Golden Girls.
Right.
And meanwhile, Katie is there sleeping over, but she crashed early, so she's nowhere in sight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's the episode. Like I said, probably one of my favorites of the season.
Yeah, I think we had some great stuff. The dynamics between Jim and Trey, the dynamics between Jim and Grace, the dynamics between Julia and Bobby. We didn't get a lot from Jimmy.
That's okay. He's had his moments.
Yeah, he has. And I think great performances by our guest cast as well. We got to meet best friend Katie. Hopefully she'll pop up again. She seemed pretty cool. Better than Sophie.
Yes.
Like, we don't want to hang out with Sophie.
Nope.
Sophie,
well, it depends
Z
which...
or J or
K
X, Y,
or
Z.
You know,
I don't know.
One of them.
Let's hang out with Katie. And it wasn't those girls from the basketball game either. They weren't involved in this.
No. I'm personally not going to hang out with Katie, but that's because I'm kind of too old.
Katie's probably the friend that Grace should have been inviting to Tahiti or wherever she was inviting
yeah,
people
but you don't want to turn Katie into a slave for you to copy your homework from and whatever she was trying to do there. But yeah. So do we have anything else to say about this episode?
I don't. And I was just thinking, I don't think I know anything about the next episode yet.
Nope.
This was episode 7 of 13, so we have passed the halfway point of the season now. Yep. And we have 6 more to go.
Yep.
6 more to go, and it would be great if this show could get a revival or a renewal for a season 2, because I think it's really starting to kind of find its place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm here for Grandpa Bobby. He's my favorite.
Yes.
He's absolutely my favorite character. Followed by, I think, Grace. I love Grace. And I think Sophia Kapana is doing a wonderful job.
Oh, absolutely.
Character.
Yeah.
I think everybody's doing a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But those 2 really stand out for me.
All right. So, Stacie can be reached at...
I can reach on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can join one of my Corn Productions Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at Corn Productions. You can buy something from the Corn Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a way to support content creators such as ourselves. And you can join the Corn Productions membership for 99 cents a month, as well as liking, subscribing, and all that jazz. Yeah, I totally screwed that up, but whatever.
Just let us know you're here.
Yeah, this is Dave. Oh, yeah, and if you comment, we will definitely shout you out. So be sure to do that if you are listening to us. All right, this is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions signing off.